everybody. Welcome back with Nicole and I to our conversation today about finding courage and hope in uncertain times. And I have to say, we've had to find courage and hope with this technology. We planned to live stream today straight to Facebook to the Body Light Centre page, but that just didn't happen. So what can you do, hey?
Well, maybe that's exactly how it was meant to be to touch onto the conversation.
Maybe, I don't know. Well, so I'm just rearranging a few things for us to get started. But so anyway, courage and hope. I've been thinking about this topic quite a bit actually, because I've had to look at those things within myself, like everybody at the moment, you know, especially in the beginning, because we just did not know what was going to happen. Things are just sort of developing into a little bit, I think people are becoming a little bit more confident the more information that they're getting, you know, as it comes through their news surface. But I was thinking how courage and hope are heavily intertwined. I think you can't have courage, or you can't have hope without courage. I think that you can't hope for a better future if you don't have courage about moving towards it. That's my thoughts. What do you think, Nicole?
Yeah, well, I mean, so true. These times we've had to call on every resource we have, I think, within ourselves and within our communities to take it day by day, a moment and moment. And you touched on something interesting there about information, you know, and as people get more and more informed about what's going on and we understand more about what's happening, you know, I don't know about others in the community, but I suspect it's the case too, because this is a conscious community of people who are keen to understand and to know and get to the truth and heart of matters. I don't know about you, Cheryl, but I've been getting no shortage of all kinds of weird and wonderful bits of information of what's going on, you know, in the front scene and in the back scene and in the cosmic scene and all the rest and all these layers. And there's so much information to sift through, and having the courage to tune into what you feel is true and right for you, having the courage to look at pieces of information that might not be what the status quo is saying things are. I think courage there, you know, to look where it might be uncomfortable, particularly in these times of great discomfort, could be really useful, actually, you know. And as we find the courage to keep doing that and looking and having challenging conversations with each other and potentially firing each other up, I mean, there's been no shortage of differing views and arguments taking place. Difference of opinions, you know, as we navigate and wrestle our way through so much of that. I think what pulls people through, regardless of what piece of information they sit with or what truth or paradigm they sit with, I think one of those commonalities pulling everyone through is that hope, you know, that hope that we're going to navigate this, and we may or may not know where it's all going or where it's headed. And yet, if we don't have that element of hope that we can get to get through the dark tunnel and reach whatever is at the other end of that, then I think, you know, you just sink into despair. And I was having a conversation this morning with someone that said the suicide rates are going up. I mean, people just saw, there was a story of someone in New York just driving along and someone, boom, jumped off a building right in front of them. And, you know, look, that happens all the time anyway in terms of, you know, depression, people suiciding. But if we don't hold hope collectively, and I think that's a key here too, because we're in the collective mode, if we don't hold some level of collective hope of navigating through this, of finding the courage to be in the thick of it and the darkness and the challenge of it, then we sink into despair, because that's the other end. When we lose hope, we sink into despair. And that just makes a hard situation even harder. So to have that courage in the middle of the dark to hold on to this feeling, idea, vision, longing that it will shift and we'll get to something better is so crucial. It's crucial. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to pause there because there was another light I wanted to put on. Barry will edit this out because I've having so many lighting problems. He's just ordered another light. And I forgot to turn this one on that he brought up. There we go. Maybe that's a little bit brighter. Oh, see how we go now. Gosh.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't do this without him. He's a doll. He's a treasure. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I've been getting a lot of information too about, all people are sending all sorts of emails and messages through Messenger. My Messenger's just clogged most of the time because people are sending me links to videos and all these different things. And, while there have been some questions about this pandemic and which have created concern about untruth, about are we really being told what we need to know? And that's a big thing too. And I think that creates a lot of apprehension and alarm in people. And when we're apprehensive, we can become overwhelmed by negative thoughts, can't we? It just sort of swamps us. It affects our ability then to make positive choices, and that sort of then feeds into this spiral, and then we'd have no perseverance in what we have to go through, right? Yeah. So, and we're going to need a whole lot of that to get through these times. A lot of perseverance. Actually, I was thinking a future show we might call Operation Perseverance.
Yes.
A couple of months after doing that, even you and I might need that, So our courage is based on our ability to confront opposition, to whether it's from a criminal or a pandemic. It's how we face that, how we come to face up to that. And to do so, we have to trust our resources, not just in the external world, but our internal resources. Yep. We've got to be able to connect with those, to allow us to stand fast in face of the fear that we feel is overwhelming us. And, no matter how big they seem to loom in front of us. And then if you back that up a bit, the step before that is we've got to have a positive attitude. You can't have any of this if you don't build it on a positive attitude or foundation of a positive attitude. And basically, that's the bottom line. There's no ifs, ands, or buts with that. You've got to have it. Get it. People have got to get that within themselves. And that doesn't mean we put on rose-coloured glasses and go tripping off to the beach in the middle of a pandemic like some people have. But it means we remain positive about our ability to cope in the situation and whatever we're confronted with.
And that's something I wanted to touch on, as I was reflecting about our conversation today too, especially for people who are struggling with that, to say, yes, well, I need to stay positive or find the hope, but I can't. Where is it, right? The world's turning to, I don't know if I can swear in our show, Cheryl, but the world's turning to beep. And it's just too beep hard to do that, right? Yeah. So for anyone who's feeling that, I wanted to touch on getting resourceful. And one of the ways that we can do that in challenging times is to go into our own personal experience of the toughest times that we've had in our life. And you're here now listening to this because you've survived that, whatever that was, whatever the biggest challenge you've ever had in your life was, or challenges, or a period of time. You've survived it because you're still here, you're alive, you're listening to this conversation. Something in you carried you through. Some element of strength, of perseverance, of sheer determination, whatever it was, the willpower, you had that will. And I've seen this in people at the very end of life moment as well. There's that difference between the will to live, the will to be here, and where that will has gone. And if that one piece is lacking, if that will to be here is no longer there, that person will have no reason to stay. They will go. meaning they will end their earthly life in this round. But if there is any will remaining in them, they will fight. Something in them will fight to stay. And they don't always win that fight, depending on what the situation is. But again, if you're listening to this right now, you have made it through massive challenges. One of the biggest ones we go through is the moment we're born and we come into the world and we're squeezed. You know, Stanislav Grof goes into this, the transpersonal psychologist, goes into this, and how birthing itself is this, you know, archetypal pattern of the struggle that we have and breaking through it into the light. We are squeezed as children, you know, whether we're squeezed through the canal and we're, you know, nearly suffocated and, you know, after being condensed in this big ball, or whether we're pulled out, which is pretty full on as well, and brought into these big lights. And, you know, maybe that's also why we talk about UFOs and aliens, because that's one of the first impressions that we get, is these big bright lights and these foreign faces from this warm, soft, squelchy place. But we made it through. That was one of the first challenges as a human being on this planet, is to be birthed, right? And we are currently being birthed, rebirthed collectively through something. And birth, any woman who's done it will know this and identify, is messy. It's an ordeal on many levels. I mean, good on you, ladies, if any of you have had an orgasmic birth. I certainly wanted one of those, but it didn't go according to plan that way at all. I know they happen, and my respect to you, sister, if that was your path. Honestly, I have things to learn from you, you know. But on the whole, women on the birthing path, it's an ordeal, and it's hard, and, you know, and it's long and just painful. And it's mixed with so much, you know, it's mixed with feelings of, I can't do this. I won't be able to make it through, self-doubt, all of these things. And I'm going into the details of this because it's a macro example of the bigger thing that's happening right now in terms of this bigger rebirthing. So I urge you, if you're struggling at this time with keeping vibes up, staying positive, having some element of hope, to tap into your own experience and find those moments, the most challenging moments you have ever been through. And I mention that for women because usually for women, you know, birthing is one of them. But maybe you've survived an illness of some sort where you came back from the brink. I mean, you were explaining something, Cheryl, about, you know, in your own story in our last episode. Who knows what it was, right? Tap into that. You have made it through before. We're going to make it through again. None of us quite know what is emergent through this because we're all active participants in it right now. But use that resource within yourself to know you've done it before, and you're doing it again right now.
Yeah, so true, Nicole. Just relating to everything that you're saying. And I think that, you know, our own self-image is touched here. You know, do we see ourselves as a capable person? Do we see ourselves as being able to cope in really difficult situations? And I was thinking about women who want to leave a domestic violence situation in their home. I can't talk about men, but just talking about women for now, you know, they're fearful because they think I won't be able to do it on my own, whether it's financially, or I won't have the inner fortitude to be able to do that, to be able to get out there and get myself organised. So I'll just stay here, you know. So it's really brings in how we see ourselves, if we see ourselves as courageous and resilient and capable. So we really have to look at, you know, how do we really see ourselves? Let's look in the mirror. You know, what sort of a person do I see in there? And another image of, well, how do I want to change that to the person that I think that's going to really, you know, glide through this? And just on that point, I was thinking about affirmations, because if there is ever a time to use affirmations, there is one it's right now. And one I was thinking of was, I move through uncertainty with calm and ease. And I think that's a really easy one to remember. I move through uncertainty with calm and ease. And you can say it in the morning, you can say it during the day, you can say it anytime you get stressed. I move through uncertainty with calm and ease. And when I've used affirmations a lot, I've actually written them out on a piece of paper and put them on the outside of the shower. So I'm reading them while I'm having a shower, or put them on the back of the loo door, or anywhere that you're on your mirror in the morning, so that you're seeing it all the time and you're reprogramming yourself. You're changing your self-image and your ability to get through difficult situations.
Absolutely. The power of affirmations, because what they do is get our mind clear and focused. And so, you know, this is not woo-woo stuff we're talking about, where, you know, you throw in a bit of glitter and magic happens, even though it can. But the power of the affirmation is, of course, you know, the focus, and it's focusing the energies of our mind. And we know this from peak performance with athletes, right? The power of visioning. So peak performance athletes will do the visioning processes of winning their races. They go through the motions because the body and the muscles and the system have the same understanding that when the visioning process is happening, the body is following suit. And so let's do that. Use those affirmations. This is this time to pull whatever resources you have in your big magic hat and apply them, you know, apply them if you know they work for you. So affirmations are such a powerful one if you get the right kind of affirmation. So that was beautiful what you said there, Cheryl. It's simple, it's memorable, and you can, you know, easily kind of repeat that as the day goes on. We can get in trouble with affirmations when we get very complex and, you know, too descriptive with language. So keep it short and simple and doable.
Yes, short, sharp and shiny, I always like to say.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And you know, what you reminded me of too there is, in terms of courage and hope, you know, I believe that fundamentally humans are good. At our core, we have so much goodness. And it's not to say we might not really stuff things up at certain point, or we might hurt other people or make really stupid mistakes and just really poor choices. This is all part of the human journey. But fundamentally, under all of that, I really feel that humans are good. I mean, a baby doesn't come out into the world evil. You know, every child comes into the world just so pure. And bubbly and gaggly, right? So it's how we shape one another as humans on this planet that really affects that fundamental base. And so I think too, another key in these times, as well as, you know, keeping that affirmation, keeping that positive view of where we can be right now, who do we want to be in this moment, and where do we want to go with it, is that deep trust in the human spirit, the goodness of it, knowing that too, that I find that incredibly hopeful, that there's something that entwines us deep down. And if we can tap deep enough into that good-natured part of us, that we really will pull through and create something amazing. And even if this direction is going in quite diabolical directions, which again, some of you getting all of these emails and bits of information right now might be, you know, hearing that. Again, we are a human species, and like the trees and their roots and their connected systems that can talk to each other, we have those abilities to tap into our kind of collective soul language, if you will. So if we can manage to do that, and I think that's also why a lot of people are saying spirituality is such a key part of what's happening right now, because that's what it relates to. If we can keep the vibes good, clear, high, sharp, what was it? Sparkly, what was your thing?
Sharp and shiny.
If we can keep our vibe short, sharp and shiny on our collective level, we can move mountains. And I know we have the capability and capacity to connect with each other on that level. And that's what I'm hungry to see that now. And there are pockets of it, definitely.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about today too was about working towards becoming more philosophical about everything. for me, philosophy is the search for truth. You know, it's like getting to when we're faced with something that upsets us, the philosophical approach asks us to look deep within and to see the truth of what's really going on here. You know, for example, if someone's upset with us, are they really upset with us, or are they just having a bad day? Are they really upset with us, or have I somehow triggered some button that their parent put in them a long time ago? You know, like when people get upset with us, it's not always about us. It's usually about stuff going on in their life, okay? So when you become philosophical, you're looking at, well, what's really going on here? And, this was prompted by a story from my auntie. I rang her a couple of days ago to see how she was going. She's 82. She lives by herself at home. And she's always been a very practical realist. And I rang her and said, how are you going through all this? Are you getting everything you need? Is your son, my cousin, is he making sure you get everything? Yes, that's okay. So what are you doing? She said, I'm baking shortbread. And I said, oh, that's a nice thing to do. She was baking it for her son and grandson. And she said, oh, yes, don't worry about me. I've got all my papers on the dining room table. And, because she has had a history of bronchial problems, and she's had pneumonia, all that sort of thing. So she said, I've just come I've decided that if I get this, I'm out of here. You know, I'll probably cark it. And that's okay. I've got all my papers here. The boys don't even have to look for them. They're all sorted, on the dining table for them, all there. And she was going about a day making shortbread. And I thought, first of all, I thought older generations should never be underestimated. But she herself was quite philosophical about her own possibly dying through this pandemic. She decided, well, the truth is, I've had this history of pneumonia and bronchial problems. I'm 82. I'm not the best of health. If I get it, I'll die. That's okay. That's the bottom line. So she was being, that seeing the truth in the situation, and that harks back to that courage. That courage. And I remember my mum and my grandma and my auntie telling, and my grandmother, but them telling me as children what it was like for them to go through World War II. And they had to have a little wear a little metal medallion around their neck with their name on it. And I think there was some sort of contact details on it. They had to wear that for school in case there was a bomb dropped or some terrible thing happened, right? So they lived through that. And my grandmother lived with, not knowing if her husband, father of her 3 children, was going to come back from the war. And just like every other woman at the time, they've lived through this. And so, the older generations are far more philosophical than the younger generations because they've lived a life. And a lot of them have lived through these types of things before. So I'm hopeful that on the other side of this pandemic, that there will be a return to, a respect for our elders in our society. I'm not seeing it, I'm seeing it from the government's point of view, that they want people to stay home to protect people who've got health issues, and particularly the elderly. And I think that's really nice to put them, really hopeful that they're actually doing that. I see members of the public aren't. They're upset. Why should we have to stay home when those old people, they could die? They're going to die anyway. They're in a nursing home. Like, I'm sorry. Life is life until we're all dead, right? Everyone gets respect here. So I'm hoping that through this, that we will dig deep and learn that. And on the other side, that respect will regenerate.
Yeah, wouldn't that be lovely to have more respect for our elders? I mean, it's long overdue, and anything that can help urge that along, would be so healthful for our species as a whole. I mean, we used to live intergenerationally once upon a time, and we understood the ecosystem of family and the life cycle. And this time, I think this is an important point. This time, our elders matter so much because they bring wisdom and insight, because they've simply walked the planet longer. And so they can tell us, well, based on experience XYZ, this is likely to happen, or, the patterns are just so much clearer to them because they've seen it before. So when your elders say to you, yes, we've been through this before, we'll make it through again. And there it is. And I think the Queen even had a message like that, regardless of what one might think of the Queen. I know she's not a lot of people's favorite person, and she's other people's very favorite person. But she, as an elder who has witnessed so much over time, had exactly that kind of message, and another piece of wisdom that really comes through at this point too are those who, again, have been at that bridge between the end of life and somewhere else, where they come back and they say, did you make good choices? Were you a kind person? And this is what it's going to boil back to. Again, at the end of all of this, we will reflect at some point, and how we behaved through it, who we were as we navigated this crisis, that's the stuff that's going to matter. The details, not so much. But how did we treat one another? How did we conduct ourselves as a fellow citizen? Did we take care of those around us? Did we add to the anxiety? Did we add to the fear? Did we help create sanctuaries of calm? What did we do? And that means, what are we doing now, right now? And you touched on that, Cheryl, when you said, how are we being through this time? Yeah,
I think that's very important. And I really appreciate and respect my elders. I was always brought up to respect my elders and to listen to them, even if you didn't agree with what they said, but at least listen to them because they have experience. And my father always used to say, everyone has a story to tell, and I think we should all listen to everyone's story. We don't have to take it all in, but just listen. Yeah,
so true. I remember, my grandmother on my maternal side, so she was born in 1910, and this was, I remember sitting there one time just listening to her, and it struck me. I thought, this woman was around before television. And I think I was talking about something to do with the internet. This was still early days on the internet and computers, and I was getting into that stuff. And it struck me, and I thought, wow. And so then after that thought, it was like, before television, and then television came, and then color, and, and so this window of internet and this level of communication, I mean, this is a blink, right? This is such a blink. And yes, given our grandparents, our elders, and our living elders right now also have never lived through this time either, right? This is also very new with its own challenges. But humans have some pretty ingrained behaviors. We have some pretty rock solid ways of being that probably haven't changed much since caveman time. Basic primal behaviors. And a lot of that is on display right now.
You touched before on spirituality, and I think that's something that people in the, I guess you could say, the awakening community have always sort of been very aware of that. When things happen, they go, what does this, is there a higher meaning to this? Is there another purpose for it? What is it all about? But I think right now, for me, I've sort of felt like, well, Cheryl, you've got beliefs, true or not, whatever they are, but I think that with any of us who believe in a higher power, whether it's God, whether it's spirit guides, whether it's great spirit or quantum consciousness, call it what you like, however you feel comfortable with it. I think it's good to get it clear in your mind now and act on those beliefs. I think this is the time when those things come into play. And, when there's a calamity, when there's something going on like the pandemic, it's so easy to put those things aside, I think, because we're in that lower chakra survival mode. We're in that, that first chakra, that right to live, right to be here, that let's get our needs met and all those sorts of things. There is a higher part of us that can come into play here. And I think it's really important to get clear with that. If people have been sitting on the fence about some of these things, I think now if you're at home and you're looking for something to do, now is a good time to go and start reading about things and looking into things, listening to people's personal testimonies that are on YouTube, and deciding what is it now that I really will really support me through this time? Can I resonate with that? And, does it apply to me? And I was going to tell a personal story here. Like my late husband and I, well, I still am, but we're both very philosophical too. We're always looking for the truth in things. And when he was diagnosed with dementia, we knew what was coming because his mother had Alzheimer's. So we'd been through it with her, and we knew the path that was going to take her on, and we knew what path it was going to take him on. But we were really philosophical. We had already, we'd spent decades looking at all of these things. Is there life after death? Is there an essence of humans that goes on after we die, in whatever way, shape, or form that it might do? So that sort of belief that we came to, which was we believe that there is some sort of an essence to our personal self that continues, even though we don't understand what it is. That really helped us when we were going through his illness. And again, we just became quite philosophical. We didn't bargain, oh God, please, help Martin, live through this. We didn't look for the miracle cure because there wasn't one then. I don't think there is one now. And we faced up to it. We both had to find the courage and the strength to face the situation, to know that he was going to die before his natural time, and then I was going to have to go on and live without him as one of my markers, a big marker in my life of who I was in relation to him, which is we all do. We create our personal identity in relation to those closest to us and what we do, whether, but when that disappears, we say, well, who am I now that I'm not that person's wife or that person's mother, or I don't have that job, or I don't have things have changed. We've got a pandemic. Who am I now? What's going on? I'm not going out to work. What do I do? And I think there must be a lot of that going on too. All those markers are being removed from a lot of people. So they have to rebuild themselves from the inside out.
Well, I relate so much with what you've said there, Cheryl, and I'll share a personal experience that was similar in many ways to that, where, I had markers of my identity as well, just shedding away from me so quickly. I call it the onion was peeling, and much like you, when I got to the core of that, and this was a process for me that happened over 3 days out of regular, ordinary and non-ordinary states of consciousness. But when I got to the end of that point, just like what you and your late husband had identified as well, for me also, it was a point of consciousness. It was like this tiny pinprick of light. And I knew in that moment there was nothing more and nothing less. That was it. That was I. That was the essence of I. Not my name, not my body, not this shell, not my relationships, none of it. That was all stripped away, and there was this tiny piece left. And what came straight after that was the understanding that anything beyond that, meaning my name and the relationships I have and the life path I follow, etc., are all choices. These are all choices. These are all part of the bigger game of life. And I get to be a player in this game of life as long as I have this embodied form. So what choices do I want to make? So you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a very kind of drastic, prolonged period of time, but it's going to bring in existential questions. Mm. People are going to tap into the who am I's, the big questions. Who am I at my core? If I don't have my job, now that I've lost that, if I don't have my source of income, my source of respect, all of these layers that we are told and trained in external society to be markers of who we are as a person in terms of our achievement. They're being stripped away right now. As those are being stripped away, well, then what? Who am I? Who am I? And, you know, if we're now at home with our children, our family members, our partners, our siblings, our parents, whoever that might be, do we still know who they are and who am I in relation to them? Because maybe we haven't spent a lot of time together. So who am I right now in relation to these people? Because we all evolve, right? I'm sure there's many parents right now rediscovering their kids all over again. Like, wow, is that the person you've become? You know, now that they get to have this time together. So yes, absolutely. That those questions that prompt us towards our essence, and then from that point, the choices that we get to make about who we want to be, that's all totally happening now. And some people won't make it through that process. Some people will remain on the peripheral freaking out about things and kind of scant along it and grasp at whatever they can. But many will go deep. And I think you're right, whether you're philosophical, spiritual, however that terminology comes across to go into those deeper questions, you know, the essence of life questions, those are wonderful explorations at any point of life to be doing. It's just being heightened right now.
It is, everything's being heightened. I think that that when we develop courage too, that it expands, it promotes expansion on all levels. Expansion in our physical body, because our hearts open up and they relax a bit too when we feel confident and know we have capabilities. And I was thinking about you know, the people the early pioneers, you know, if they didn't have courage, which it wouldn't have led them to hope of finding new lands, would it? So and when they went exploring, they didn't go with everything that they could foresee that they would need. They had to have confidence in themselves and their own abilities, that they could adapt whatever they needed that they didn't have along the way. And in a lot of cases they did. You know, it's sort of like pioneering, really. We're all pioneers at the moment. We're pioneering something that is, you know, it's a territory that none of us have walked on before. We're trying to create maps for that territory, but the map is never the territory. So there are always different things that will arise, and we'll go, oh my gosh, there's something else, and there's something else. And, you know, like, I would hate to be a member of government through and after all this to get us through. They must just be, the minds must just be exploding, like, oh my gosh, the domino effect going on for them. But it happens at our level too, at the grassroots level, that we have this domino effect of how things change. But we have to have the courage to allow them to. You know, our partners to change as they adapt, our children to change as they adapt, and our idea of our family to change as they adapt too, and give them the space to do that. And I was really heartened to see yesterday that for this Easter, people are adapting. Families can't go away for Easter, but they go to camp in the backyard. I mean, that's just one very simple form of adaptation, but you know, it's the great staycation, and I think that's a great word for it. You know, camping in the backyard, and I think that's great. But we have to allow people to be different, and we have to have the courage to face who they may become.
Absolutely. The courage for so many things right now, you know, as you say, the courage for allowing, the courage for walking through and being totally challenged, and the courage to stay positive in it. That can be a courageous act as well. It can be quite a radical act, you know, particularly when there's pressure to cave into certain modes of anxiety and fear right now. And so to have the courage to be a beacon within it, to say, I will be informed, I will stay informed, but I will not kowtow or be told how I need to behave or respond in any given situation, you know. And as you said, with certain leaders, yes, they're really, you know, walking the coals right now. And as they do so, we are really seeing what quality leadership looks like and what atrocious leadership looks like as well. And so it's so interesting that because things are heightened and in many ways fast forwarded as well now, we're just seeing more of what is already there, right? And so that back to that personal reflection, like you mentioned, we too are having our own reflections in how we behave and conduct ourselves in situations heightened right now. So I keep coming back to that piece about we get to choose, you know, we really get to make choices at this time, how we each walk it and navigate it. Yeah.
Mm. So let's sum it up, Nicole, on some of the tips that we've sort of covered. Yours first was, do you remember?
Oh, wow. We've covered several points, haven't we? One of them, the big thing in the beginning was to get resourceful. So touch on the challenges that you've had before in your life. Yeah. And be your own best personal resource in that. Know you've made it through before and you're making it through again.
Yeah. And be willing to change, to adapt. And working to become more philosophical, to see the truth in everything that's going on around you. And there's so many little things that happen in my daily life that remind me of that. I can't quite think of examples now, but I just go, wow, what, you know, like that's been there before me. Why didn't I sort of notice it, you know? So, and what's really going on there? And isn't it? And I guess in the positive way, it's for me is I look at, I have big sliding doors that go out onto the front deck, and so you can sit in the lounge room and look outside, and I have hanging baskets, and birds come every day. They have their own schedules. One particular bird goes into one of the hanging baskets I have and pulls something out at 7 o'clock every morning. I didn't notice that before. But anyway, yeah, and so also establishing a firm foundation within ourselves that we can build that courage on to get that platform going, you know, that and looking at who we think we are and our capabilities, you know, rechecking on that and changing that to a more positive approach. And I think if we put all of that together, along with our spirituality, you know, I think people can move through this in a positive way. They just have to persevere and hang on to all those things.
Yeah, I guess to cap, I would say, you know, we are all pieces of artwork. And so we get to be evolving and creating and recreating ourselves constantly. And we as a species on this planet are also in a creative process right now. So it's in a bit of a destruction mode, but as anyone will know, in the cycle of creation, the winter time, the autumn and the winter time, it's necessary to shed. It sheds, it lets go, it prunes itself. And what happens is the energies get into the core and they go deep and they, you know, exactly like people are going home right now and they're going inward. And when the time comes, over time of that rest and recuperation, which is what is needed at this time, and the planet is certainly doing that itself, after that time comes the summer, you know, and then the spring and the summer, and out it comes again, and the movement. And because we've forgotten those cycles in how the modern world works, it's very drastic to us that we're experiencing a collective autumn to winter right now in terms of our health and economy. And just governance and social structures, all of it. We're going into a very dark winter. But we will come again into a spring and a summer, and we may then go again, you know, if we can honor the cycles a bit better, maybe it doesn't have to be so drastic in terms of when this happens. You know, we haven't touched on this yet, but the whole idea of capitalism and constant growth, it's constant growth, and that's unsustainable, and that's the constant summer, right? And as we know from the seasons, summer doesn't last forever. Nature knows that, yet somehow in our, you know, getting so departed and removed and divorced from nature, we have forgotten the wisdom of those cycles. So are we being reminded of that right now? Well, that's another, perspective that we could put on that perhaps we are. But yeah, that was a bit of a long cap, but I think that's the cap I would probably put on that. And so when we put it back into courage and hope, and I think of those cycles, to know that there's a deeper wisdom, there's always a deeper wisdom at play, like nature and the cycles like that. And to hang with the goodness that resides deep within the human spirit. I trust in that, knowing that at our core we are good. And good can come of this. So,
yes, yeah. I fully agree on that. So, so thanks everyone for tuning in today. I think that's a nice spot to leave it there, and we hope that we have given you something to lean on in times of uncertainty, and to draw that within yourself. Whatever tips may help you, we offer that in the most humblest way. And we wish you well on your journey.
And we're sorry the live stream didn't work today, and we'll carry on trying to get that working. But until then, journey well.
Bye, everyone.